What do we need to go across this time?
Huh?
You need to go across. Hey Doug, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes, sir.
Perfect.
How you doing? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Hogan, do we have any public attendees as well? Just want to make sure everybody's had a chance to log in.
Oops. Let's see, we do have 6 participants. And that's us, and there are 3 attendees.
Okay, great. All right. It's now 1:02, and I'll go ahead and call the March 22nd, 2022 Castle County Planning Board meeting to order. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. I'd like to thank our guests for being here today. Hope everyone's doing well. The approval of the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Hearing no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a quick note, if the planning board wants to go this direction, Mr. Barker is on the Zoom call for the the cell towers update, which is near the end of the agenda. My assumption would be his update on cell towers will take a lot less time than the comprehensive plan review and discussion. So if the board wanted to, you could amend the agenda to hear from him first, and then we can move on to the other business.
All right, hear from him after the approval of the minutes.
Just wherever you might want to fit it in the agenda.
Okay, let's shoot for that. Is any objection? All right, we'll move the broadband discussion under item 5, or listed as B, right behind the, excuse me, right after the approval of the February minutes. The item 5. All right. No second. Second. Motion made by myself, seconded by Mr. Daniel to approve the agenda, and with the amendment, the broadband discussion will come after the approval of February 2022 meeting minutes. All those in favor, please let me know by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Approval of the February 2022 meeting minutes. Thank you for handing these out, Mr. Hogan. And Amy, thank you for preparing the minutes. February, appreciate all your hard work and diligence. Anyone have any suggestions or revisions to the minutes? All right, here no discussion. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as is. Make the motion. Motion by Mr. Daniel. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Harris. Yes, sir, Mr. Foster.
I mentioned this before. According to the bylaws, we do not have to second our motions. We'll continue the, I know it saves time if you don't have to second.
Okay, is that for the minutes or is that for all?
Everything. According to
Everything.
the bylaws.
All right, we'll leave that in the discretion of the board. So, Mr. Dan, you made the motion, correct? Correct. All right. All those in favor, please let me know by saying aye. Motion carries. All right, Mr. Barker, thanks for being here today. We've got you listed as under broadband discussion on the agenda. You have any updates for us?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to
Excuse me,
kind of
cell
jump
towers.
in. We got into a lot of delays along with everybody else with everything that's going on nationally and internationally, and just wanted to bring everybody kind of up to speed and let you know that we are still building these towers. We've finally towers manufactured for both the locations at West Caswell and at Prospect Hill. I will be submitting for a building permit on both those locations before the end of the week. And then we'll start construction as soon as the building permits are issued. And it should take somewhere 3 to 5 weeks to get those constructed. So we're finally to the point now where they are ready to go, and contractors established. So I will be submitting for the building permits, and those towers, they should be up in the next from today, probably the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks, that they'll be constructed and ready to go. The other one that was approved, High Towers location, I'm in environmentals right now. Environmentals on these things take, sometimes they'll take 6 months, but lately they've been running about 4. So I'm still probably 40 days, 42 days, something like that from environmentals clearing. And then the FCC can issue me my permit, and I can apply this one for a building permit as well. So that one's, it's still a little bit out, probably 3 or 4 months from being constructed. But we're just in that phase of waiting on the environmentals to come in. So we will see 2 of them out of the ground very shortly, and then that third one, it's just in the cycle.
What was the Prospect Hill on the other one?
Mr.
West
Barker,
Caswell.
we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you if you're able to speak louder.
Oh,
But
sorry about that.
Commissioner Ostraker had
Sorry
a
about that.
question about you mentioned the Prospect Hill, and then I believe the West Caswell site, more or
Correct.
less being
Yes,
constructed and permitted in tandem.
Correct.
And those were
Correct.
completion within 6 weeks?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And I sent you an email asking if you could kind of give me a list of what's been done and what's coming with some dates on it. Did you ever get that email?
Ooh, I'm not sure. I very well may have.
Well, don't bother to look for it. I'd rather have the information.
Sure. But that's where we stand. You know, we have the towers actually manufactured. Getting the steel manufactured was a big delay for us. But we have the towers actually manufactured and they're ready to ship. So we'll be applying for the building permit before the end of this week on both of those tower locations, and then starting construction as soon as building permits are issued.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Barker?
I do. This is Tony Foster here. Mr. Barker, is there any way that you can continue to give us an update on these cell towers so that we can, again, I'm going to see what we can do to try to keep the community updated on these cell towers? Is there anything, any way maybe provide some type of data sheet to us on a monthly basis to this board? Or if you want to come in and give us an update, can you do that on a periodic basis?
Certainly, if it's good with the board, I can just email Matthew, just monthly, email him before your all's meetings, and kind of keep everybody apprised of what's going on.
That'd be great. That would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nothing else
absolutely.
too. We share an office of building inspection, so we should know when the building permit gets requested.
One other request, Ms. Barker, is it possible also to give us some insight into 5G service, when that would be deployed on each cell tower? Are there any plans in place for that?
I have to ask Verizon that question. I'm assuming that Verizon is deploying 5G on these towers. And let me ask that question, and I'll get it back to you. They'll be able to answer that question in a day. So I can tell you that very quickly. My assumption is I don't believe that they've deployed anything recently that has not had 5G on it. but I want to verify that before I say officially.
Okay.
And let me ask you this then, is the 5G range a little better than the alternate range that we had, the old range that we had? I know it's 3 miles radius, I thought you said.
No, 5G actually shrinks coverage area. So they won't just be running 5G, they would be running 4G and 5G both on the tower. 5G gives you a lot more data, a lot more information that can go through, but in doing so, it somewhat shrinks the coverage area. So you'll have 4G coverage in much larger area than you'll have the 5G coverage, but they typically deploy both on each tower.
All right, any further questions for Mr. Barker? Okay, Mr. Barker, thanks for taking time to join us and an update on the progress. And we appreciate your continued communications with us, please.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks a lot. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, next we have on the agenda unfinished business, the Watershed Review Board pending appeals. Chair recognizes Mr. Hoagland. If you could please give us an update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so this is exactly where it stands as of a month ago. The pending watershed permits that were appealed for the 2 Sunrock developments are still in Superior Court and waiting on a ruling, and we have not received any sort of action or determination from any of the attorneys representing any of the parties. So from a procedural standpoint, the best thing for the planning board to do is to continue this issue to the next meeting, name that date certain of the next meeting, and that avoids us having to go through the rigors of mailings and other public hearing requirements, which are part of state statute.
Okay, so, and we received communications from the planning board attorney, Mr. Hornick, and this will be his advice.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right. This is the motion that you passed out before us.
Only you have that.
Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and make the motion then, and I'll pass it around if anyone would like to review it. Okay. So the motion, as stated, is I move to adopt the resolution from the February 22nd, 2022 planning board meeting as written with the following amendment. Now therefore be it resolved by the Caswell County Watershed Review Board as follows. The Watershed Review Board hearing with respect to the Sunrock appeals now scheduled to begin on March 22nd, 2022 shall be and hereby is continued until the next Watershed Review Board meeting scheduled for 1 p.m. Tuesday, April 26th, 2022. And that would be a motion. Is there any discussion? Here, no discussion. All those in favor, please let me know by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. The Watershed Review Board hearing is continued until our April meeting. Next on the agenda, under new business, the comprehensive plan discussion and review. Chair recognizes Mr. Hoagland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at our last meeting, we talked about the comprehensive plan and kind of where the county was in the review process. If you recall, the commissioners had initially agreed to form a steering committee to review the comprehensive plan. And then I can't remember exactly which meeting it was. I think it was the March 7th meeting. They then voted to do away with the steering committee and again, keep this as a responsibility of the planning board. So as the comprehensive plan outlines, it's good practice for the planning board to review the comprehensive plan on an annual basis and make any types of recommendations or any other changes that the planning board may like to make. Ultimately, that has to go back before the county commissioners to be voted on and adopted into the comprehensive plan if there are to be any amendments. So, Mr. Chairman, you and I spoke not too long after the commissioners had made that decision, and you instructed me to reach out to different folks throughout the community that may want to weigh in on the comprehensive plan. So I reached out to Camara Graves, the town manager of the town of Yanceyville, Mayor Patricia Williams of Milton, who is with us today, Brian Singleton with the North Carolina Forestry Service, Dr. Pam Senegal with Piedmont Community College, who's represented Emily Buchanan is here today, and Jennifer Eastwood with the Health Department. So obviously, we have two of those representatives here today. Brian Singleton just sent me a message, an hour or two before the meeting. Really, there are several wildfires that they're dealing with as a whole unit in the western part of the state. So he's actually been dispatched out of the county, so he's unavailable today. But we do have two representatives here today, and I'll just note a couple things and then turn it back over to the board. First off is this is a relatively, from what I understand, a relatively open-ended assignment, and Commissioner Oestreicher can certainly clarify that. But again, the role of the planning board in all of this is to review and make recommended changes if you wish. You don't have to, but it's certainly one of the responsibilities of the planning board on an annual basis. And with regards to the town of Milton, and in addition to that, the town of Yanceyville, if you all will recall, one of the things that we did as a planning board last year was revise the Unified Development Ordinance to comply with General Statute 160D. 160D also requires that if a local government does not have a comprehensive plan in place by July 1st, 2022, then they have to do that. And that's their deadline, July 1st, 2022. So I say all that to say, both the town of Yanceyville and the town of Milton are currently working on their comprehensive plans as well. So just keep that in mind as we review this and possibly make recommendations. Our other towns in the county are simultaneously working on their comprehensive plans at the same time. So with that, I'll turn it back over. I did receive some notes and suggestions, obviously from Scott Oakley and Antonio Foster, and I printed those out. If you gentlemen want me to pass them around, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. Thank you for reaching out to our community partners. So we have our guests here today. We really appreciate y'all being here, Ms. Emily Buchanan and Ms. Patricia Williams. So we'd like to open the floor to you all, if that's okay. If there's any input you'd like to give as far as the comprehensive plan, or if there's anything you'd like to see added, I'd love to hear from you now, if that's okay.
These are.
Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Okay, well, thank you for asking me to come, and I sure do appreciate that. Just as Matthew said, we are in the process of completing our comprehensive plan by July. And one of the things that was just shown to us, we're working with a team from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And with that team, they've done a fabulous job of kind of directing us, because our administration has not done this before prior to this. So with us not having a comprehensive plan, we've kind of had to go from step to step to step. And one of the things that was just presented at our last meeting, our last planning board meeting, town meeting, was the future land use map for the town of Milton. And one of the things that was on that future land use map, which I thought was so appropriate for me attending this meeting, was that they show that there is a pedestrian bike lane that for the future, granted being said, that would connect the county through Country Line Creek. And so I was questioning this, not knowing, and this is actually something that I was told that was as a future prospect that the Castle County had on their comprehensive plan. So I'm here to verify that with Matthew being right here. But that would be something that I think the town of Milton would certainly be interested in the future, creating some sort of pedestrian bike trail along Country Line Creek. And that creek goes throughout the county and actually extends outside of Castle County. So that being said, I think that this was a great time to come in and kind of get with the planning board, because you guys are right now, it sounds like you're looking over what is existing and possibly doing something for the future also. But That's where we are.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
And maybe we could research that with Mr. Hoagland, determine. I remember there was some discussion about multi-use pathways in the comprehensive plan, but I don't remember if they were on Country Line Creek. So maybe we can research that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of perspective, bike paths and trails and alternative forms of transportation or recreational forms of transportation in the comprehensive plan that are all, it's all just kind of a blueprint and a suggestion that allows boards like this to take that up as an initiative if you wish. So I'm not sure how clear that is unless I zoom in a little bit more, but over on the right-hand side, it says Figure 23 Castle County Bicycling Brochure Map. I think this may technically already exist because these are just existing roadways. So for example, loop number 2 up there in the top right-hand corner is kind of that purplish color. And I think that is an existing loop that if a roadway bicyclist wanted to come into the county on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon and ride, that would more or less be the Milton Loop, 62 through Milton, down 119, and it looks like High Rock School Road. So those, I guess, are the existing bikeways, but you're talking about a possible new bike path. That was
Yeah,
all along.
that was what I was understanding.
Yeah.
When the future land use map was presented, because there isn't a trail or any type of multi-use biking pedestrian trail along there.
Mhm.
And that was something that I questioned. I said, well, where did this come from? And they said that it was already in the works for the county to connect to the town of Milton. And I thought, well, that's wonderful to have a connecting multi-use lane along the creek or along the Dam River for that matter.
Yeah, and similar to that, so this is kind of a hypothetical public transportation map that routes the abandoned rail lines through from kind of the Providence area over to Milton along what used to be, I guess, were they the Norfolk lines?
Yeah.
And this is page 42. This is other existing throughway on page 43. If you're ever in town in Yanceyville, you see like a little number 4 sign right there in the middle of town. That's the labeling of this bike path. And then this is the map that we just looked at a moment ago. So some of these are already basically existing. It's just a matter of if a roadway bicyclist wanted to take them up and utilize them as more or less scenic trails. And then I guess any sort of additional trail, especially if it would be through easements or private lands or along creekways or anything like that, would need to be an additional proactive effort launched by the county and possibly in concert with the towns.
Right. Well, when you're talking about the trails, I know that through the town of Milton, there is the actuality of a trail. Well, not a trail, but a bike path. And, there's not anything that is actually drawn or marked as a bike or pedestrian trail. I wouldn't encourage anyone to get on a bicycle, on 57. I mean, we have the 18-wheelers rolling through and all the other traffic. So I would deem it very, very unsafe. But when they brought in that there was a future example of a trail along Country Line Creek, and I went, well, where did that come from? Because it was all presented to us, and that's when they were talking about, well, it was something that was pre-existing with the county. And I thought it was a great idea to get the bikes and also the pedestrians for safety off the streets, off the main roads. So, but I thought, oh, that was a great way to tie in the town of Milton into the county. But that information could have been wrong. When it was presented. Sounds like.
I don't know that it was wrong as much as it was just hypothetical. Just yes,
Okay.
here is
It
a,
was just
here's a
a-
possible bike route that the county could pursue if
Yeah.
the county wanted to move in that
Yeah.
direction.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Chair will now recognize, Mrs. Emily Buchanan.
Thank you. And Dr. Senegal sends her regards, and on behalf of Piedmont Community College, thank you for the invitation to be on here today. So if I could, I would just like to echo a little bit of what I see in this handout, the comprehensive plan perspective updates, and just reiterate how pleased we are with the progress that's happening with the Center for Educational and Agricultural Development. We're still working really hard to make that happen, and we anticipate that there will be some visual work that can be seen being done very, very soon. We're getting ready to have some field prep work and shovels in the ground getting ready to start. So that's something we have been very proud to be a part of. And I also saw in the handout the Dillard School renovation, and I just wanted to mention we were a small part of that too, and we are really proud to be a part of that. The college has partnered with the group to offer classes on that facility once it's built for the residents who live there in terms of healthcare and health screenings and cosmetology and barbering. So those are some things we're really proud to be a part of. The college also is really proud to have a strong relationship with the Ag Extension Office for some after-school programs we're working on, and with the seed site, with the Economic Development Office with Corey and Lindsay, and also with the Chamber of Commerce. So we have a lot of work going on with the county that we're really proud of. Our programs are really booming in the areas of healthcare. In fact, we just started a nursing cohort that's primarily on the Caswell County campus, and only on the Caswell County campus. And there are cohorts that happen in Roxborough, but this is the first time it's happening in Caswell County. So as planning progresses, that is just something that the county may want to keep in mind as we anticipate bringing in more of those programs. And there is a huge need for simulation labs and other training needs for healthcare industries, because that's just a really booming industry. And we're trying to prepare our students to make a living wage at home in and around this community. Another thing that is a priority for us right now is the casino that is going to be built in Danville. A lot of our community partners have really expressed interest and curiosity in what's happening there. So it's just worth mentioning that we're building a relationship with the casino people so that we can train people here locally for jobs, so that our residents, because so many of them go out of the county to work and may even go into Virginia, that we're not left out of that piece. We also think it's going to impact the county in ways we don't even know yet. And so that's something we're trying to get ahead of and something that we're working on. So I think that's worth mentioning as well. And then briefly, just the last thing I wanted to mention is, without anything too specific, our concerns continue to be internet access for our students. Especially if the pandemic taught us nothing, it taught us that is a must for a lot of reasons, certainly healthcare and telehealth reasons, but absolutely for education reasons. The pandemic changed every facet of life, and it absolutely changed education. The distance learning is not going anywhere. It's here to stay. And in fact, it's going to get ramped up even more. So anytime we have a platform to express how important that is to us, we try to use that platform. So internet is a access to everyone in the county is certainly a priority for us. The other big priority for us that we see as a barrier to our students is public transportation. We have tried in some of our outreach programs an approach where we go out to our community members to recruit. We go out to our youth to provide enrichment opportunities, because having them come to a central location for those things is very difficult. And that's true for students who are trying to complete a degree program as well, especially in something like welding or nursing that can't necessarily be done online. So internet, public transportation, and then of course, education. Since we are an educational institution, we want very deeply to be able to recruit high-quality educators at every area, to educate our youth at every level, and to keep those educators here so that we have a really good pool of knowledge and talent to train our community moving forward. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. That's a lot of information to digest. Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. McGinn?
Emily, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
All right. Are you gonna provide some type of input for the comprehensive plan in regards to those particular topics that you just mentioned?
I'm happy to do that, absolutely.
Is that what we're doing, Mr. Jones?
Well, it's like Mr. Hoagland stated, this is an open-ended strategy here, so sure, if she would like to make recommendations and submit those to Mr. Hoagland. That would be appropriate.
I think those are great. Just has to be upfront, so everybody knows I am on the board of trustees, my community colleges. So.
Yeah, and just for a little bit of context and how I think this really ties in is if you look at section 4 of the economic or of the comprehensive plan, it starts to talk about the goals and vision and strategies. And 4.1 is economic development. And 2 of the first bullet points that they address, which I've got up here on the screen, are to construct a multi-purpose agricultural center that serves as a one-stop shop for farmers of Caswell County, and to develop training programs through Piedmont Community College that focuses on agriculture and agricultural-related education and technologies. I mean, that almost perfectly describes exactly what's going on with the SEED project. So, yeah, absolutely additional recommendations, but I think this is the type of thing where it's important for the board to hear from Emily and kind of, you know, filter the comprehensive plan through what's been accomplished over the last 8 or so years when the comprehensive plan was first adopted.
Yeah, Matthew, in addition to that, there was a second email that I sent out today where I was kind of rethinking some of the prior documents that I'd sent out, so you can just ignore the one that was passed out. But one of the things that might be good is even more thought into the specifics of if we look through the comprehensive plan, there's lots of interest there in terms of, you know, making sure agriculture continues to be promoted, it grows, and trying to find, you know, even expanding into having processing facilities and things like that in the county. Obviously, we have lots of farmers in the county. I'm not familiar, probably some of the farmers could speak to this better than I can for sure, but you know, when they take products to market, where do they have to go? And it seems like if, you know, if we're producing lots of agricultural products, there would be a good focus to try to get the processing of those products in our county to create jobs that would be aligned with, you know, the vision and the county. But if your Dr. Sundahl had any insights into what could be added to the comprehensive plan specifically to promote those types of businesses, that, you know, that may be very, very helpful and insightful. I see the comprehensive plan is a great document. I think the people that put this together put a tremendous amount of work into it, but you know, unless we work to make it a living document, it's just going to be a document that we open up once a year and put back on the shelf. And that's not the purpose of the document.
Sure, go ahead.
The seed program that Dr. Senegal and PCC has adopted answers everything you just said. Basically, as far as jobs, as far as stuff, and we're going to get into this in this document I produced. The seed program is going to be on Highway 29, future 785, Interstate 785. 80 acres. It's going to have plots. So if you want to lease land to plant gardens, you can do that. It's going to be educational for the students. But the best thing that I see for it is a hub for selling food and purchasing food for the north and south corridor. They've already got a list of partners, 4P being one. It's a company out of Maryland,
Yes.
out of Maryland that comes through all the way down to 29. It will stop at the hub, buy food, probably even sell.
Well, and the hub will be run by 4P, the for-profit partner.
Mhm.
And in fact, a lot of our farmers are already selling their products through 4P. It's already started, even though the building's not there yet.
That's right. And it will go all the way from 29, 5785 up to 85, make a loop, head on back. It's gonna be great for the farmers, great for the community. So we're very excited about that. So it's gonna answer a lot. Dr. Senegal looked at the comprehensive plan. That's what's so great about the comprehensive plan. She came in, when she came on board, she looked at it, and county commissioners told her, this is what we wanted. She went out and she did a lot of recruiting, a lot of talking, and got a lot of information. She made this happen. Her and her staff made this happen. But I'm very happy for this. So thank everybody in the community also. And I also want to mention that we do have a cooperative program too. If you want to sign up for a cooperation program to sell your products, you can do that now. And I won't get into the details of how much that costs. But you can also do that.
I was a little bit familiar with it because they had the article in the newspaper a couple of weeks ago. So I did read that. I wasn't even aware of that until I read it in the council message. So it's good to have something in there about it.
Yeah, this is a 2-year project. Started 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's, what I was just referring to would be, what additional things could be done in other parts of the county to expand that. So. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, but you hit the nail on the head of the last meeting when you brought it up. And I thought that was really, that's right on point. When you asked those questions, I said, hey, the seed program answers your question.
Mr. Hoagland, did Mr. Singleton give you any feedback from this?
He really didn't. He just kind of asked me what to expect if he were to attend the meeting, and I talked to him a little bit about, where the planning board was in terms of reviewing this, but that was about it. So.
All right. Any other input from your end, Mr. Hoagland, as far as the comprehensive plan?
No, I don't have anything in particular. I'm certainly happy to help if the planning board has any questions as you're talking about it. And from my recollection, if there's any area of the comprehensive plan that I can cite, I'll be happy to do that. But other than that, it's totally up to the planning board to take it from here.
Well, I'm thinking maybe based upon Ms. Buchanan's suggestions, if you wouldn't mind, maybe reaching out to Mr. Hoagland as well as your recommendations. And they don't have much free time, but we appreciate your assistance. And then, Mr. Hoagland, maybe we could have those recommendations on the agenda for the next meeting.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Any further discussion about the comprehensive plan or potential entities we could invite to help be part of the process?
Are we gonna go over these?
If you wish, yes, sir.
You go ahead.
Okay, and I'll start with one here, the comprehensive plan and prospective updates. I produced that last night. We already talked about the seed, and then Mr. Buchanan has already talked about the deeds. So that you all know, I'm on that board also. So we're very excited about it. We just received $8.1 million for the deeds building, and it was Caswell County building. And that's going to be a facility for seniors, 53 rooms for apartments for seniors, and we're very excited to get that. Been working on this for 30 years. People before me worked on this, and so we're very excited about that. Land use, I think it's very important, and this is part of land use that some of it anyhow that going to be coming to fruition hopefully this year. And also going to the seed, you're supposed to get in a facility hopefully sometime this year, right? Starting work on this. So you have the information on the land building use, just one area. And I don't know if anybody else has anything on that. And then I think we should highlight within the comprehensive plan, the state of the art high school, the new high school. Definitely want to talk about that. I don't have all the details, but I just want to bring that to attention of the board. Same thing with the Coast Square facility. Corey and Lindsay, I noticed in the comprehensive plan that they were talking about hiring a economic developer. Block has been checked, and has been done, according to that person, she's doing a great job for us. And broadband, high-speed internet, we gonna beat that horse to death. I think we may be going to get something done on that spectrum. Cell tower, we just got an update on that. Transportation plan, I saw something in the comprehensive plan in reference to transportation. Some of the things that has already been updated in those Highway 29, new asphalt that has been updated. Basically, I think they just got to kind of wait for the changing of the signs. I'll imagine, I don't know. But I know that has been updated, the highway. DOT. But one thing I did see in there was the turning Highway 86, basically, I guess, from coming from Chapel Hill or coming from Danville from a two-way to a four-lane. That sure would be great if we could prioritize that. Again, that's something that DOT has to, so we have no push on that.
We've got a member on the PRC
Yeah.
Board Transportation Advisory Committee. Okay. But I was on that committee last year. That's pushing a pretty limp road. Yeah. Well, for one thing, all the plans they had scheduled for 23, we pushed out to 28 due to COVID and funding and all that other kind of stuff. The issue is we fall into all sorts of prioritization in the complexity of turning 86 into a four-lane highway.
Yeah, I know. Got a lot of hills and different things you gotta go through.
Yeah. I don't want to be negative about it, but it's not something they're anxious to do, in my reading.
And that was actually one of the things when I was reading this, I was thinking about, because it has a transportation plan in there. It had items in there such as flagging of 86 and a variety of things, but I just didn't have a good feel for how much influence the county has into executing any of those things. And therefore, this is one of those things. Is it in there just because it's a nice to have? Does it do anything? If it doesn't do anything, then I don't know that it should be in there if we have no power or influence over it. If we do, we should keep it in there and we should try to push for what we want, but
if I can say something on that, I was reading the community meeting formats, different uses for the comprehensive plan. One of the uses for comprehensive plans for people to see that, what we're trying to do. The right person might see that. When they're going to, I don't know whatever the case might be, but the right person might see that in the comprehensive plan, it might be able to make some things happen for us. So I would think that we want to keep it in there as a priority, just for that.
Looking for me for a comment.
Oh, Mr.
just anybody that has any insight.
I can weigh in, and you may be able to help correct me on this if I've got it wrong. To answer your question, I think the county does have some input on those types of transportation projects, but it's relatively minimal. And as Commissioner Ostraker mentioned, the recent events in COVID-19 were terrible for state infrastructure projects because you had the reality of everybody's at home all of a sudden, which means they're not out driving, which means they're not out paying the highway tax, which is the funding mechanism to get these projects greenlit, right? Then there was, I don't remember his name, but there was a director of the Department of Transportation 2 or 3 or 4 years ago who was wrapped up in some gigantic scandal that led to the mismanagement of some millions or billions of dollars of fund, and the General Assembly had to come in and patch that huge hole and backfill a lot of the monies that were earmarked for transportation projects. So you kind of had a double whammy there, a huge gap in the budget and people not paying taxes to actually go out and pave the roads. And so everything has been delayed. If I understand the process correctly, the regions get together, and we're in the Piedmont Triad regional conglomerate. The regions get together and representatives from the different local governments vote on a prioritization list of infrastructure projects throughout that region. So what it would require is the Caswell County representative basically lobbying others in the cohort to help bump that up the priority list. So in the planning board's context, in terms of making a recommendation, the planning board could recommend that whoever the county affiliate is or representative is to that board, push as hard as they can to bump up that,
That helps me
to
understand.
bump up that prioritization, especially in light of the casino coming along, for example.
Sure, sure.
Forgot about
Does
that.
that make, did I describe that accurately?
That's a more detailed explanation of my two shots. Wow.
Yeah,
So we do have some input.
Yes, some minimal input, but we're a small town in a small county. And
Yeah, but you see the
Mid-sized
key
region.
word there, unless that, thing in Danville.
right,
Just-
but what's weird too is, I had a conversation not too long ago with Jason Julian with the NCDOT, and he said it's the funniest thing where, let's say there's like the Boom flight manufacturing facility that just got announced in Greensboro. That's very easy for the system to look at and say, okay, big new economic development project in Greensboro. Let's do the transportation funding necessary to provide that access to that source. For some reason, the calculations just aren't run the same if it's right over the state line. So even though the Danville, the casino is coming in, for whatever reason, the metrics don't fire to send the signal that this is a priority, even though it's going to have a huge impact on the transportation corridors of Castle County.
So that's why it's very important that we put it in our comprehensive plan.
Now, the good news is 29 is already being conditioned to be turned into 785. So it's really just a matter of if the county wants to move forward with 86 to focus on that.
And again, we're looking at seed too, because a lot of this is into seed too.
Yep.
So you got two new things, two factors, seed and casino.
Well, the seed certainly is going to be, was cited there because of 29,785
Right.
partially.
so one other question, and this could apply to any road, but we're stick with 86. So let's say coming through the Yanceville area, you have some areas that have like the center turn lane, you have some areas that don't. Does that fall under state DOT, or is that any county jurisdiction for
Same
that?
answer. When I was on the rep, when I was the rep for that, the 3-lane, they were called primarily passing lanes, were identified, there were, let's say 3 that were identified, and they were on the schedule for 23. Move to 28, along with everything else.
So there were some passing lanes in parts of the county, meaning probably.
Scheduled.
Scheduled.
Those probably stand a greater chance being prioritized. Well, those stand a greater chance of being prioritized versus a 4-lane highway.
Sure.
And I would think part of the recommendation would be to take a look at those. It's number 1 for transportation, number 2 for 4-lane on 86.
And from what I recall too, because I was part of some of these local meetings that they had, the PTRC had a program for a while where they would come, a representative would come to Caswell County, and I was on that committee. And we prioritized straightening up the intersection of 86 and Old 86 so that it looks more like a plus sign as opposed to an X, because it's actually a hazard to have to turn greater than 90 degrees to see oncoming traffic. So that was one area. And the second was a turnout lane and a 3rd lane at the Providence convenience site with the 86 mark in that area. So those I believe are greenlit. They're on the schedule. It's just they've been pushed back now 4 or 5 years. But before that 4 or 5 years gets here, the casino will be finished. So
I would think getting a relisting of those from David Owen, who's the current rep, and him pull those, or have Matthew pull them off of the PTRC DOT listing and just kind of reiterate those. Would be
Yeah,
the most productive way.
Yeah.
Matt, do you know if there's still a stoplight schedule for the intersection of Park Springs Road and 86? Is that been funded?
I don't recall, was that ever part of the discussion to have a stoplight there?
I just heard about it within the last several months. I'm just
Oh, really?
wondering, yeah.
I don't recall that being on the priority list. The turning lane for sure, just north of that.
Had several bad accidents there this year. Just
Yeah.
curious.
All right.
Mr. Foster.
Okay, just a couple more things. One is, in the comprehensive plan, it mentioned food desert. Low access to supermarkets. There's only one supermarket in the county. I guess that's Food Line here. But I don't know if all of the Dollar Generals that have been built within the last few years, are those considered supermarkets, small supermarkets or what? Is that a fix for that?
We have most everything with produce,
Right. I need fresh produce
general,
or meat.
general food products. Have that.
The one here in town has fresh produce, some fresh
Yeah,
produce.
most of them don't.
Not really.
Those are rural.
Most of them don't have fresh meat or produce, but they have most of the other general products.
So the question is, what's the fix for the low access to supermarkets? It's something we need to look at again.
We need more.
We need a mayoral decree.
Yeah.
Go to Publix in Milton about the treaty of the mayor.
Well, I need another one on the east side and one on the west side and got one in the middle, basically.
I
Hey, let's not
assume,
forget Prospect Hill. We need a Harris Teeter then.
I think like anything else, you know, it's, to me, it's same as broadband and cell towers. It's a matter of demand. More than anything else. If we had a greater population, even if we didn't necessarily have a greater population, but we had a population that was more interested in fresh produce and different food alternatives, that may be a resolution, but.
And again, I guess 4P is gonna be answering that question too, because they're gonna be selling fresh food.
I can give you some insight into this, right? This is where private business opportunities can step in, right? My parents were in the grocery business most of their life. And as an example, my dad owned Red and White when that was operating here, right? He owned Oakview store and Bain store, and he had another store in Epsom. So the dynamic here was when they opened up Bain store, right? It was just a little country store, right? Well, because he had the buying power from the other stores, he brought basically every kind of grocery product in there. Plus, he had a produce guy that stopped, a couple of times a week, had fresh produce, and they also kept meat, although they had to keep that frozen because they didn't have a meat cooler to keep that in. But smaller businesses can be, very functional in those, but you also didn't have the competition at that point with the Dollar Generals and Family Dollars. So it would be much more difficult to do that same thing today. But, small businesses can do it, but they have to create different opportunities. For example, fresh produce and meats and specialize in that versus higher cost products. So there's opportunities out there, but again, without some type of incentive to do it and try it, I got many people will.
Mr. Foster, any other?
Yeah, just a few more things, and I'll shut up. I added on here a community meeting format because I wasn't sure, Chairman Johnson, if we're being asked to completely do the comprehensive plan like it was done in 2014, or are we just being asked to just go in and update just certain parts? Are we being asked to do the population data, economic data, all those things that were done in 2014, or we just basically want to give a review that we're obligated to do?
My vision was to gather as much community input from the local organizations as we could, the community partners, gather their input, incorporate it in any statistics like population. We could collaborate with Mr. Hogan. to update some of those numbers, that would be great. But, again, this is open-ended, so that was my vision at first, but if it leads to other scenarios,
Okay.
that would be appropriate too.
Let me jump in on that one, because that was in the newer document that I sent you. That what I was thinking about was, could we kind of do this in two phases? And phase one of this would be exactly that, because most of that data that's in there is based on, 2010 before. And I'm assuming with the updated census data, there's an opportunity to update numbers again for 2020. And honestly, I think if we could get that entire section 2 updated with 2020 data, we could then look at that and have some other insights into, into our county. And it would give people another update on that. So I don't know how that gets done or what resources it would take to do it, but I think that would be, part of phase one. So if we can get updated numbers and get some additional input, then we could kind of go into phase 2, which is actually, updating the document and looking at, okay, what are the goals and objectives that are listed in here, and do any of those need to be updated? And that's where I think even, we have to get input from the commissioners as well before we do a final draft, because I think there has to be alignment at a commissioner level and everyone in terms of updating any of these objectives and goals and aspirations that they have in here. But anyway, just on that point, I would really recommend that we try to pursue that. And just to elaborate on that, the first thing that I listed in this updated document actually was in section 5. There's, where it talks about us doing this annually. There's also a listing in there that the planning staff can do an annual update on where their successes. And so, for example, the Seeds project would be one thing, but I would like to actually have a report as part of this phase 1 that says what has been accomplished, where do we have successes, and document that.
Yeah, I think Mr. Foster's document touched on.
Yeah, you already started that, right? So that's a good thing. Another piece of this, as I was reading through it, when they had all the community input part of the original document, I think that was section 4. Another success would be the item that we got passed, right? So that was one of the things that was listed in there very specifically, that everyone who had input strongly agreed that there should be materials and stuff like that, right? So we got something passed. So that would be another accomplishment, that aligns with that comprehensive plan.
All right. I believe you're talking about, there on page 120, there's potential ordinances for the county just before it's in the land use, general land use strategy.
It was actually in the survey section.
Okay.
They had the questions and do you agree, disagree, strongly disagree, all that. I have it referenced in that document that you can refer to. But
Mr. Hoagland, I'm thinking that we can incorporate some of the information that Mr. Foster and Mr. Oakley presented as it relates to the successes. And Mr. Oakley, would you like to give Mr. Hoagland as far as updating all the numbers that we can obtain through the census data?
Sure. Just quickly, if I may, I believe this is specifically what you're referring to. There's a section in the comprehensive plan that speaks to potential ordinances. And as I mentioned, it's on page 120. And really, if you look at these have all been accomplished, for lack of a better term, more or less. Heavy industrial ordinance as you mentioned, we had, HIDA was passed in December of 2020. The watershed ordinance, there is a watershed protection ordinance as part of the UDO, Article 10 of the UDO. There is a cluster development section within the subdivision ordinance. So it's not its own ordinance, but it is, our current subdivision ordinance does allow for cluster developments and cluster subdivisions. And then in terms of logging regulations, the only thing that I can think of is the UDO does require that if a property owner is going to engage in logging, they cannot do so prior to subdividing their property. So you can't go buy a big 20-acre piece of land and log it without a forestry management plan. If you have a forestry management plan, that's perfectly fine. But if you just clear cut and log it without any plan in place, then you go to subdivide it. That's actually a violation of the subdivision regulations. So the UDO does currently have something in place, but the vast majority, and this is something that Brian Singleton were here, I'm sure he would testify to this. The vast majority of properties in this county have a forestry management plan in place. They filled out the required paperwork with the forestry division. They have a 20-year schedule, and it's a very measured, planned, planned out type of process. I think people become alarmed when they see a property logged, because if you moved to Caswell County 20 years ago and you're thinking, hey, this is fantastic. I'm in the middle of the country. It's nice and quiet. I'm surrounded by these lovely trees, and every once in a while I see deer and squirrel go across my property. And then next door gets logged, it can be alarming, but almost 100% of the time, those properties are in a forestry management plan as outlined and approved by the forestry division. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but all of the points that you mentioned, address there.
That's part of it. And then on the top of page 90 is the other reference to it.
Okay. Is that correct, page 90?
Maybe 92. Actually. Top of 92, very top.
Okay.
This was part of the public survey type thing.
I see. Okay. Certain land uses, including landfills, heavy industry, et cetera, should be regulated in an effort to protect the character of the county. And 23% strongly agreed, 7% agreed. One had no opinion, and that was it. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah.
Further discussion.
If there's anything else on my list,
Basically, and even just continue to look at the document, and I did put some things on here in reference to how the last comprehensive plan was done, how they got the information with the community meetings, when those meetings were and everything, and what they came out with was the top issues that were identified, like economic development, health and wellness, and agriculture and rural perspective, preservation. And then I put up under here, how to use the Caswell County Comprehensive Plan, because I wasn't sure. And when I saw that, that really helped me out a lot. So I just put that in there for us. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
okay. So we kind of reviewed these. Let me just, this is at the very top of the document that I sent out today. So the first one was just what we talked about, for the next meeting, could we have a report that talks about the successes and maybe even the failures, right? That we've had in association with the, comprehensive plan. So, some of those things have already been documented, but it would be nice to have that and try to do that on an annual basis. And then section 2, when I was looking at that, it's primarily, can we update all of these numbers or the numbers available? I'm just working on the very top of this, Matthew. We don't have to go into the details of it, but I was on bullet number 2 there. So, if, I guess this is a question, right? Do we have information available to update that section, with all the demographics, numbers, 2020 data, is that something that's possible? Does that come out of your, basically, would you do that? Do we have to reach out to other people to do it? Is that something we all work on? I mean, happy to help out on, this if the data is available. But anyway,
So my assumption, just to answer your question, if you would like, my assumption would be half a yes. If that makes sense. And the reason I say that is, it's probably going to be very easy to get a lot of top line census data from the Piedmont Tribe Regional Council. And they're really the parent entity that captures all of that data and then disseminates it down to counties when it comes time to do redistricting and update numbers and things of that nature. So general population breakdown by ethnicity, age, other demographics, things of that nature will probably be relatively easy to find and substitute into the old numbers or add an addendum to the comprehensive plan and say, okay, that's where we were after the 2010 data. Here's a rough estimate of where we are for after the 2020 census. In order to dig deeper than that, again, my assumption is we would have to officially involve the Piedmont Tribe Regional Council, which would involve, the county manager's office or either directly from the commissioners to say, we're going to have a contracted relationship and get them to dig up deeper numbers to help us out.
because that's what they did in the original
Exactly.
document.
Exactly. So just to summarize, my assumption is getting the top level census data is going to be very easy for us. Digging deeper is going to require more time and more money. And you just have to ask the question whether or not it's really.
Maybe we try to go after the low-hanging fruit first and then see where we are at.
Absolutely, yeah. And my thought on that is, if you look at the sentiment of the people who got together and put this thing together in 2014, wanting new economic development opportunities, wanting better grocery stores or produce options, whatever, wanting better internet, wanting more cell towers. The sentiment of how they felt then hasn't really changed from how most people in the county feel
I
today.
don't think so either.
So if really digging in and getting deep numbers doesn't really change that metric anyway, my assumption would be updating the top line census data would be really all that we would need at this point.
But, and just on that topic, and I really don't know the answer, right, to this, but I think if you ask most people, they would still say, yeah, we want more job opportunities and economic development. I think there's probably a lot of people in the county would say, I don't want things to change. I want to stay exactly the same. And I think I've lived here all my life, right? Other than, the occasional store or whatever that pops up, probably more development in the last few years with the Dollar Generals than ever before, but they're just replacing what used to be country stores, right? That's the replacement for them. But, the way I look at all things is you're either gonna act or you're gonna be acted upon. So if we are proactive in trying to do things and put plans in place, then we should continue down that course. If our attitude is we're just going to keep things as they are, whether the casino is positive or negative for our county, I have no idea, right? But it's going to change something, and if we just let it change, then we're being acted on. And so, that could be good, it could be bad, but I think in general, we should not pursue a path that just allows us to be acted upon all the time, because I think that's our current position in the county, is we're being acted upon all the time.
So I would just say, as a planning board member, it's on you guys, whoever feels the same way, to kind of make that case, and you have the opportunity to make those recommendations and run them up the flagpole.
Yeah, I agree. If you do nothing is what's going to happen. So I think anytime that we can be out front, take the keyword initiative and do things that we think the community needs, or get information from the community, their opinion from the community. I think it's very important that we try to move on that. I love the fact that we should maybe look at phasing this thing because it is a lot of work here, but we shouldn't be running away from it.
Yeah, the only other thing I had here in phase one was just, depending on what type of economic development the county wants to pursue, maybe we should try to find and bring in people periodically that can speak to our specific requests on how economic development has been done in other areas and what could be done. I mean, but when I think of economic development, I really don't think anything is going to happen in our county. I mean, if that's really what the county wants, right? And this is not my opinion one way or the other, right? But if the county wants economic development, the only way you're going to get there is through an infrastructure development. You know, apparently the city of Yancey has lots of capacity, extra capacity when it comes to water and sewer. So, you know, unless that gets expanded out to other areas, you create opportunities for, you know, more dense housing, or you put areas in place where businesses can come in, because businesses are not going to come into areas that primarily don't have utilities available, right? And so all this stuff works together, right? And I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I think that's pretty common sense. The broadband piece is obviously another essential piece, but that there seems to be a lot more movement in that area. You know, recently I know in our part of the county, they're putting down fiber everywhere. How long it takes to get deployed, I don't know, but that along with 5G service, it could happen pretty quickly. So, but still, there's no infrastructure there, so you're still, you know, population densities and land availability is still, you know, it's up to the county to.
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly where, but I think there is an area of the comprehensive plan that talks specifically about an interest in kind of the county and the town of Yanceyville partnering for expansion of utilities, specifically water and sewer. In some of the
Section 3 or something.
outlying areas. I will say that I had a conversation with Camara, the Yanceyville's town manager, before today's meeting. She couldn't make it today, but I'm really hoping that she does. She is able to make it at the next meeting or maybe the meeting in May to talk with the board about the town's reality of the town situation when it comes to water capacity, because I think the physical water is there to be dispersed, but actually extending new lines and connecting new customers and having a system that's more connected and not dead-ended, really, just for lack of a better term, is a lot easier said than done. And with all these things, it comes to financing. So the first question is it something that the counties and the town are still interested in pursuing together? And then obviously the big question is, how do you pay for the thing? So that's my thoughts on that. I mean, there is a section of the comprehensive plan that speaks specifically to that. And I think that having the town manager here to discuss the realities of the situation on the ground would be very beneficial.
Yeah, when she comes, if it's possible to bring maps of where the current infrastructure is, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
And I think that would even be good to put into this document.
Yeah.
Because then you could say, okay, here's the map, and here, as part of the comprehensive plan, this is where we want to extend it, right? These are the areas that would be best developed if you extended these utilities into this area.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, part of our conversation was, she told me that I think for the first time since the Depression, the town is doing that. The town is now mapping all of their existing infrastructure assets, which I don't know that has been done since the sanitary district was created as part of the Great Depression Workers' Progress Organization. So that's really important stuff to know, obviously.
Yeah, well, we definitely need to incorporate that in this stuff, because to me, it's one of the key pieces of information that's not there. If you don't have that strategy of where does this extend to next, and prioritization, just like you have with the transportation plan. I don't think economic development is even worth discussing until you have that piece of the puzzle involved.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. Thank you, Mr. Foster. Mr. Hoagland, you have all their suggestions, recommendations in place?
Well, I have a couple of notes based on what was talked about, and more or less what I think are responsibilities for me to do, and that is to pull all of the current NCDOT priority list projects for Tazewell County, and then to go through and assess all of the goals and objectives as they were outlined in 2014, and kind of give an up-to-date list of accomplishments based on those goals. If there's any other directives that I can work on between now and the next meeting, I'm certainly happy to.
And you could possibly look at the updated census data as well.
Yeah.
I know this won't be done in 30 days, so this will be an ongoing agenda item for the next several months. We keep this on the agenda, and if you hear from the town manager for Yanceyville and Brian Singleton, we'd love to hear their input as well.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to planning department updates. Mr. Hoagland, reference to broadband.
Thank you.
Whenever you get a minute, take your time.
Chairman. Yeah, sorry, I'm just making some notes here. Yeah. All right. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I do have some what I think are really good updates, and certainly some information to kind of build on where we left off at the last meeting. So primarily right now, when it comes to new broadband deployment throughout the county, most of the action is with Charter Spectrum. Let me see here if I can. Let me see if I can find these RDOF maps from the last time. There we go. And I will share my screen here. The best news of all of this is that Charter has confirmed to us that they have turned on customers already in the Chapel Road area, kind of in the southwestern portion of the county. And that makes a lot of sense because the data that they gave us in the beginning was that they would be, the primary backhaul of fiber would come out of Alamance County and then kind of work its way north and start and begin really in that southwestern corner. So down here where you've got the label Stony Creek, more or less as an approximation. Like I said, we do have confirmed reports that Charter has already connected customers and has active fiber in that area. In addition to that, so let me zoom out a little bit. And obviously the green on the map is Charter. The red dots on the map is Starlink, and that is Elon Musk's satellite-based internet service. That is also already active. So if you are in any of those red areas, you can go online, you can, apply for the equipment. As far as I understand, you are mailed equipment that attaches to your house, attaches outdoors, however it works. But our deputy building inspector, for example, lives over here in one of these tiny red dots and inquired with Starlink a few months ago, just got his equipment, I think maybe a couple of weeks ago. And he said his life is forever changed now that he has high-speed internet there in the Hico Lake area.
So let me ask you a question. If you're in the green area, can you still continue? Can you get Starlink, even if you're in the green, if you want Starlink also?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it would be worth it for somebody to look
You
into.
can certainly apply for it, but I don't think they're making.
Yeah, I think, so the difference is, from a customer's perspective, I think it's a maybe. What you're looking at here, this map is really a requirement of the federal government's grant program. So what the federal government is saying is if you're in those red areas, Starlink must provide you the opportunity to connect to their internet. If you kind of understand it that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so as I said, Charter is connecting customers in the southwestern corner already. They're going to continue to deploy. What they've told us is they plan to be done with the green shaded areas by the end of this year, by the end of 2022. Starlink customers are coming online. And then a couple other points with charter is, from the information I was given from the county manager, we are prepared to give them the data necessary to apply for both the GREAT grant, which is a North Carolina Internet Grant Opportunity, and something that's relatively new, which is known as CAB. And Commissioner Oestreicher can help me here where I lack knowledge, but this is kind of an overview of the CAB program. So let me take them one at a time. The GREAT grant basically says, first off, GREAT is an acronym for growing rural economies through access to technology. And the GREAT grant basically says if you live in a census tract area that has really low internet, you can apply for this grant dollars. The grant money goes to the broadband provider, and the broadband provider must provide access. It's very similar to the federal grant, which charter has already benefited from. So I'm not 100% sure what will be left on the table when it comes time to apply for the GREAT grant. But as I mentioned, I've been told that that's part of the plan.
GREAT grant does not overlap the RDO area.
Okay. So then there's the CAB, and this is something very new that I have tried to devote a little time to researching and better understanding, but every time I got into it, the phone rang or the email dinged or somebody walked in the office or any number of things. But basically from what I understand is what CAB is meant to do is to fill in, where's that map? To fill in these gray spaces on the map. Where the gray spaces on the map, from my understanding, are either areas where there is existing internet service or there's no existing internet service. So maybe this little void down here, maybe an area where the CAB program says that a county and a broadband provider can partner together and apply for money to more or less fill in those gaps.
Does that include if you have something like CenturyLink,
What do you mean?
those gray spots? Does that mean you have?
Yes, yeah, but it's tricky because the federal government is the entity, the FCC determines the metrics that create that map. And they say if one person in that census tract has high-speed internet, which means internet as slow as 25 megabits per second, then we're going to consider that the entire census tract is covered, which obviously is not accurate. And the determining factor on verifying whether or not the entire census tract is covered is the broadband provider providing coverage to the census tract. So the FCC goes, hey, CenturyLink, are you providing access to this entire tract? And CenturyLink goes, yeah, of course we are, man, don't worry about it. And then that's how this map gets created. So I think CAB is really just kind of a catch-all that seeks to fill in these gaps and allows, I think it allows the county to use ARP dollars, American Rescue Plan dollars, and then it allows the broadband provider to match up to 33% of the total funding. And then I think actually the state will kick in up to 33% of the missing funding as well. So it's like a third kind of a funding formula, split between the provider, the county, and the state to fill in those gaps. But again, I'm not 100% sure on those details because it's a program that I'm just now becoming familiar with, and this is really being spearheaded now by the county manager's office anyway. He's always got a lot more details than that.
The minimum acceptable access speed is 25 megabits download, 3 megabits upload. So CenturyLink doesn't do a very good job of it. Which very close to a office connection or something like that. So
25 is not good at all.
Yeah, mine, I made it 10, I did 3. So the CAB will go a long way into filling these in. There is a matching requirement for the county. to get up to $5 million. And that could be as much as $250,000. I hadn't heard that ARP might be used for that.
You had not heard?
I had not heard that, but that doesn't mean that's not the case.
Yeah, and again, I'm not 100% clear on the details either, but it kind of on their top line information page here, they've got appropriates $400 million for the American Rescue Plan for the new program. So maybe it's for this, it's for the states to use and not the counties to use. So I'm just really not 100% sure.
I think that's right. That's out of the state's allocation. I don't think that's out of the county.
Yeah, if anybody wants to subject themselves to the torture of reading through the legislation, it's Session Law 2021-180. And I would say that they put together a handy dandy video here, but I think it's like an hour-long conference presentation. So that may be torturous as well. But we thank them for everything that they do, but it can just be a little daunting to wade through all the information.
And when we first started looking at this, it almost seems like these programs compete with each other to some extent. Qualify for some, you don't qualify for others. You get money from here, you can't get money from there. It is a labyrinth to sort your way through before you find the cheapest.
Can you go back to the map? Sure. The last meeting, I mentioned that I would like to see this map produced to everybody, the community and everything. And I told you that I would do the instructions on how to do it. Basically, I've done that. I've got the information from Mr. Hogland, just information I need from him. How do you put the address in there? That's what I was asking you.
Yeah, so just a little magnifying glass
Okay.
up
Can
on
you
the
show
top
us-
right here.
Show us how to do it.
Yeah, sorry, my mouse is. So you just click that and then enter your address and it'll take you right to it.
That's the step I was missing. So I'll finish that up. And I get about a page and a half. I'll send it to you. Can we put that, maybe send it to Amanda Hodges, sends out a document every month on what's going on in the community. Can we send that to her so that the community can have access to that? The
Absolutely.
directions. And I kind of broke it down to kind of make it easy to. I let my daughter, granddaughter, was 13, to take a look at it and say, show me how would you do. So after I typed it up, it's too hard. So she made it a whole lot easier.
I assume so.
Amanda's mailing list is to chamber members. Isn't it?
Not much chamber number, no. I'm not a chamber member. I get it.
Probably get it. Well, I don't know.
And because she's, what's going on, what's happening in,
Yeah, okay.
I guess I get it every month. We do the same thing with the cell phone information that we get updates from Mr. Barker. Send that to Amanda, who could we send it to?
Amanda would be happy to do it, I'm sure.
I know she would.
And I would encourage to do that. I think posted on the county website. So
Oh, okay. Okay, so you got it. Well, I'm just asking.
in addition,
Okay.
and I know that Deborah, last name just flew out of my head as a message.
Councilman.
Yeah. She's always happy to put something in the paper.
You have to pay for that, right?
No.
Okay. Okay.
If you write a blurb, paragraph, semi-paragraph with just a web address, would just go to the county website
They'll take information source.
or county information. I mean, she'll find a place for that. She's always happy for copy.
So let's do.
They need to-
I mean, yeah, so here's my caveat on this is, it's not really my project. It's basically the county manager's project at this point. So I'm a little hesitant to do anything in particular without making sure he's aware or asking him about it. Maybe he's got something else in mind, you know, I'm just not, it's hard for me to give you a definitive yes until I kind of talk to him.
I understand.
All right, Mr. Hoagland, thank you for the
Yes, sir.
the broadband update, and we've got the preview of the April agenda items, please.
Sure, yeah, and I actually have a couple of things. So I wanted to make the board aware of a recent issue that the commissioners talked about last night. And if you would like, you can take action on it, more or less make a recommendation. So earlier we talked about the HIDO, the High Impact Development Ordinance, which regulates certain uses. And among those are, cell towers, rock quarries, sawmills, and many others. The HIDO recognized that many of those uses were in place at the time of the adoption of the ordinance. And so that means they would become what are known as non-conforming uses. There's a section in the HIDO that says, if a non-conforming use wants to be grandfathered and as a result not subject to the ordinance or not be fined or penalized or anything, then they have 1 year from the adoption of the ordinance to submit a site plan to the planning department and basically come into compliance. Well, that 1 year window expired in December of 2021. So we had a couple of issues that necessitated looking at this, had a conversation with the county manager about it. He instructed me to reach out to these various entities. We've got 12 throughout the county that I was able to get in touch with, and basically say the county wants to extend the period, wants to give you an additional 6 months, which would be September the 15th, to submit site plans to my office and make sure that you're grandfathered in. So far, 3 have done that, all of the cell tower properties in the county. I've got documentation coming from the Pelham Rock Quarry. I've got documentation coming from substations of gas distribution, things of that nature. But based on their debate last night, it looks like the commissioners are going to officially make a motion to extend that deadline as well. So at minimum, I wanted to make the planning board aware of this. And again, I wanted to leave the opportunity open. If the planning board wanted to make a recommendation, basically to go along with this, then you could. You don't have to. It's not something that is required that the planning board review it. But if you wanted to make a recommendation for the commissioner's guidance, then you may.
No. What was discussed and agreed was that the HIDO needs to be amended with that date. And part of that process is that the planning board has to review and come back to the commissioners with a recommendation. And the commission, and then have a public hearing. And commissioners will vote on making that.
Discussion about how long the extension would be.
6 months.
Or 6 months from the date that was in there.
Well, we didn't get too specific.
All right. Well, Mr. Hoagland, it wasn't listed on the agenda today. Thank you for updating us. So if we could maybe get more coordination with the county manager between now and the next meeting, and plan to have that on our agenda for the next meeting. That makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and then so with regards to the preview of the April agenda items, so there's a couple of issues coming along that would deal with RV parks. I have an application for an RV park on Highway 62, but unless the proposal is for more than 1 acre of disturbed land, then it doesn't have to go before the planning board. If it's less than 1 acre of disturbed land, then it can be approved administratively. So I've got a little bit more information coming in from their site plan as opposed to their calculation on total disturbed acreage. If it does, obviously that'll be on your April agenda. And then we had a proposal to put an RV in a flood zone right outside of Milton, but the current UDO does not allow for RV parks to be placed in flood zones. So a gentleman in the Milton area has submitted an application to amend the UDO to allow for RV parks to be placed in flood zones. And the UDO requires that such an amendment be given 30 days prior to planning board consideration. So I want to make you aware of it today, and what I will do, the April meeting is scheduled for the 26th. So before the end of the week, I'm going to email you. He's got 2 binders full of data that are at least this thick. I will email you a digital scanned copy of what he submitted. But if anybody would like a physical hard copy, that's going to take me a little bit more time to produce, but I can just let me know before the end of this meeting. I can get that for you in preparation for the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. Again, thank you for all your hard work and effort. Is that all of the?
That's all I've got.
Okay. All right, next we have the adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion. Motion by Mr. Harris to adjourn. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thanks. Give a special thank you to our guests here today. Thanks for coming and listening.